If you're drafting a fantasy football team this year, you're in the right place because there are 5 wide receivers that you absolutely have to have on your radar this year that are going way too late in drafts. These guys have more upside than your league mates think, and those are the exact type of picks that can help you win your league. And if you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetri. I've helped people for nearly 8 years win their fantasy leagues, and I plan to do the exact same thing for you in this video. And let's start with sort of a deep sleeper. It's a second-round rookie for the Los Angeles Chargers, Tre Harris, and honestly, I think that this was like the perfect fit in terms of a rookie wide receiver with the offense that he landed in. And I think people are massively sleeping on Tre Harris because he goes to the Chargers where Ladd McConkey is clearly their wide receiver one who broke out last year, but I think these guys can actually benefit each other. Let's look at player profiler right here. In the last 3 seasons, Tre Harris has gone over 900 yards every single year, including 2024 where he has over 1,000 yards. He ends up having a very strong season. He has a 17.2% yards per reception, and in general, he got hurt. He got hurt last year. The splits before he got injured were insane because he played in 7 full games and then injured his groin. And I mean, he was on pace to shatter college records, it seemed. Let's look at the game logs right here. According to the ESPN game logs, this bottom game right here is the first game that he played on the season. And what does he do? Oh, he only has 179 receiving yards. He backs it up with 130 yards. And let's just keep going here. Oh, 94 receiving yards, just a bad 10-catch, 94-yard game. Then 225, 176, 81, 102, and then he gets hurt after having a 1-yard reception for 43 yards. Literally, he was averaging like 120 yards per game. He looked like maybe the best wide receiver in college football, or at least on the short list of like the top 5 while he was healthy. And it's like nobody even cares because there was other wide receivers who got more attention. There was the Travis Hunter in Colorado and how they just got all the immediate attention as well. But Tre Harris ranked first in the nation in receiving yards per game, nearly 130 receiving yards per game. Before his injury against LSU, if you take out that game where he had the 1-yard catch for 43 yards, he was averaging 10.4 targets per game, 8.4 receptions per game, second in the league, and 1 touchdown per game. The guy was an absolute monster. He was extremely productive for Ole Miss. He was dominating on the outside with his speed and just route running ability. And really, that's what it comes down to. Like, his deep threat chops were legit. Check this out. He averaged over 5 yards per route run, which was first in college football, and a ridiculous 9.3 yards per route against man coverage. And you can see some of his success rate stats according to Austin Abbott FF over here on Twitter. Against man coverage, 73%. Against press coverage, 72%. Those are both very high numbers in terms of just your success against man and press coverage at the line of scrimmage, which kind of checks out as to why he was dominating and averaging nearly 130 receiving yards per game for Ole Miss. And one more stat just to show you here. Ian Hart, it's a great Twitter follow. Be sure to check him out. He says, this Tre Harris guy might be good. So this is a chart that's basically showing yards per route run last year and also how good you were against man coverage. Up and to the right means as good as you are. So look at all these wide receivers here in the left, right? It's a little bit blurry because it's a small image, but you're getting guys like Tet McMillan or T-Mac, Jalen Noel, Jack Bass, Kyle Williams. These are all guys who were drafted this year as well in like the 2nd or 3rd round. McMillan the 1st round. Tre Harris is the only one all the way up and to the right. Obviously, he's an outlier, which means his 7-game sample is also somewhat of an outlier, but he also did it. He also went out there and averaged 130 yards per game, over 5 yards per route run, which is an unheard of number. He's good. So this isn't some like tiny slot wide receiver or like a one-trick pony who can only run straight down the field. No, he's a capable wide receiver at 6'2", 205 pounds, a borderline alpha. And now he lands on the Chargers, who honestly are desperate for talent on the outside. We just recently got news that Mike Williams is retiring. Okay, so Mike Williams is retiring. Quentin Johnston is anything but reliable, right? The guy has drops. The guy doesn't run the right routes. He's just somebody that they can't trust. So what do they have? They have Ladd McConkey, who could win in the slot and on the outside. He proved last year he could be a pure alpha. Some people think he's undersized, but as long as he can stay healthy, which is a big if, he's a great receiver. Other than that, though, it's just Tre Harris. Some of the other competition here, another rookie that they took in Lambert Smith. He used to play for Penn State. He ends up transferring in college. Darius Davis is a speedster on the outside. Didn't get much run last year. It's just Tre Harris and Ladd McConkey, and there's no reason why that Ladd McConkey can't continue to dominate and earn 7 to 10 targets a game in the slot and out wide, while Tre Harris goes out there and also does his own thing on the outside. Like, even though this is probably going to be a somewhat run-heavy offense still for the Chargers, they'll probably skew towards the bottom half of the league in pass attempts. You're still going to get Justin Herbert throwing the ball 30, 35. Some games, heck, he'll spike for 38 pass attempts in a game. And if 10 targets are going to Ladd McConkey, there's a lot of meat left on the bone for Tre Harris and an offense that just doesn't have a lot of other target competition. And meanwhile, Justin Herbert, his quarterback, is just dying for somebody on the outside to do something. Last year, Justin Herbert, despite not having weapons, despite leaning on Quentin Johnston downfield, was still 7th in deep attempts and 5th in money throws last year. This is a guy who can perfectly combine skill sets. Justin Herbert's big arm, his ability to evade pressure and actually find guys downfield, and now you're pairing it with a guy who dominated all last year in downfield receptions in Trey Harris. It also helps when you look at the rest of the offense. You look at the offensive line here. I'm really interested to see what Mekhi Becton on this team can actually look like, because the rest of this team, I mean, you have Rashawn Slater, you have a bunch of first-round picks, and Joe Alt, you have Zion Johnson also here, a bunch of first-round picks, right? They draft Bradley Bozeman. Like, this is an interesting team in general to see with their offensive line. Like, it has the pedigree, if they can stay healthy, a big if, to probably be a top 10 unit in the league, which only helps the entire offense gel, especially gives you time to find guys downfield. All this is at least worth noting for Trey Harris, at least if we're talking about him in a favorable way. So that's a lot of information on a rookie, and the reason why I want to start the video with him is because he's currently going as the 135th overall pick. Now, this is also factoring in, this is consensus rankings, so a lot of people who are currently doing mock drafts, if they're doing it in like the parts of July, they're probably really into fantasy. A lot of people who start to draft at the end of August or maybe even beginning of September before week 1, they're not going to know the rookies as much. So there's a decent chance that 135th overall, which is like the 12th round of fantasy drafts for 12-team formats, there's a decent chance this is even lower, like in ESPN and Yahoo, that Trey Harris doesn't go until like the 14th or 15th round, which is just crazy because to me, he looks like the clear-cut number 2 option in what we believe is a quality offense, especially an offense led by a nice quarterback in Justin Herbert. Now, this next guy is not being slept on. I mean, he was a rookie last year like Harris is this year, and they kind of profile in similar ways in terms of how they can win, but Brian Thomas, the former first-round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's just an absolute beast. You guys already know that at this point. He might be already the most explosive player in all of the NFL at the wide receiver position. Of course, that's crazy to say when you have guys like Jamar Chase still in his prime out there, right? But he's up there. And honestly, what we saw in his first year, despite like everything working against him in this Jaguars offense, was impressive. He was a wide receiver 1 in fantasy, finishing as a top 12 receiver with 16.7 points per game. He had 10 receiving touchdowns, which is insane in this Jaguars offense. I mean, look at any stat that you want. As a rookie, he ended up ranking 12th in receptions with 87. The dude had over 1,200 receiving yards, 3rd in the NFL. Let's go down to the efficiency metrics. Oh, as a rookie, he was top 10 in yards per out run. Probably the number 1 most sticky stat to show just how good of a wide receiver and player you are is your yards per out run. If that's in like the 30s or maybe even the high 20s as a rookie, it means thumbs up for the rest of your career. You're on the right trajectory. His was 8th overall. I mean, this is like, he's probably going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL for the next 5 to 6 years type start to your career, like Justin Jefferson level start to your career. And that's just what he did in terms of accounting stats. Like, we want to talk about how you actually win in the NFL or even in fantasy football. Like, what are offenses looking for? They're looking for guys who can get first downs and score touchdowns, sure, but they're looking for players who can make explosive plays of 20 plus yards, and that's what he did. Because Thomas ranked 5th in deep targets, 8th in the league in air yards, and he was tied for the most 50 plus yard plays in the NFL. And look, this wasn't just like he had 1 or 2 or like 2 or 3 50-yard plays. He had 5 50-yard plays despite half the season playing with Mac Jones as his quarterback. This dude was the true number 1 wide receiver as a rookie last year despite having competition. That competition is now gone. I like this tweet right here. You can see from Ryan Heath. He says, please draw up some fantasy-friendly slants for Brian Thomas. We actually saw these slants really come into effect when Mac Jones took over. It makes sense. Mac Jones not as good of a deep ball thrower as Trevor Lawrence. Per fantasy points data, Brian Thomas was the best of anyone in the NFL at separating on those fantasy-friendly slant type routes. Let me just say this. With Liam Cohen coming in as the offensive coordinator, I'm pretty sure Liam Cohen is going to be completely fine saying, yeah, we'll give him those gimme routes that he just dominated on after the catch because he's an elite athlete with crazy speed and size. Yeah, we'll give him more of those. And just to have that backed up even more about Liam Cohen, you can see a great tweet from Jacob Gibbs. He says also, he kind of just echoes the same thing here, that the average separation on slant routes, Brian Thomas led the NFL, but he only ran a slant 4% of the time. Now, Mike Evans in Liam Cohen's offense last year ran a slant on 10% of his routes. So Mike Evans was running slants 3 times as more than Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas led the NFL on that route. I think he's going to get more usage now that he has the exact same coach that Mike Evans had last year in Liam Cohen. And the crazy part is, like, if something was to happen to Trevor Lawrence again, we already have the sample that Brian Thomas, like a Justin Jefferson, is just quarterback independent. Like, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is. The final 6 games of the season for Brian Thomas, with Mac Jones as his quarterback, and basically Christian Kirk being hurt, Evan Ingram going down during that time, the defense is only having to focus on Brian Thomas. The dude was still averaging 23 fantasy points per game, according to RotoViz's game split tools, nearly 12 targets per game, and over 98 receiving yards per game. He was a monster. He had at least 10 targets in all 6 of those games individually. The guy was dominant with Mac Jones. And honestly, I'd argue that the situation heading into 2025, and it doesn't take that much of an argument, is even better for Brian Thomas. Like, sure, if you look at the additions in the NFL draft, this is according to the team changes tracker in my fantasy blueprint. You can check it out down below at jointheblueprint.com. There's limited spots still left for this year for all my draft and in-season tools to be a part of the community. Jointheblueprint.com. Travis Hunter was taken in the first round, the wide receiver cornerback. I think he's going to play a lot of wide receiver. But outside of that, if we look at the rest of the moves this offseason, Christian Kirk is gone, Evan Ingram is gone, and also Gabe Davis was cut, if you see down here on these subtractions. So we're looking at like 94 catches, 153 targets up for grabs, over 1,000 receiving yards up for grabs. Okay, so let's just say that most of those go to Travis Hunter, right? Nearly 1,000 yards. Now, probably not 90 catches, but even if it's 70 receptions, okay, that's fine. There's still so much left for Brian Thomas to not only do what he did last year, over 1,200 yards, 80 catches, 10 touchdowns, maybe even more. Because there's a world where the offensive line improves slightly, although I'm not too encouraged. We'll see. But the biggest piece here is that Liam Coen is now going to be calling plays, a massive upgrade in terms of play calling, right? This is a guy who helped Mike Evans and Chris Godwin produce top 20 seasons when healthy last year for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin himself was number 2 overall in fantasy points per game during that stretch. And also Trevor Lawrence is now back and healthy, which is a big upgrade from Mac Jones. In terms of Liam Coen, when he was asked at the scouting combine, he basically said, like, our pass game is going to run through Brian Thomas this year. I know that Travis Hunter is there, and I think Travis Hunter could be a really quality fantasy pick as well based on where he goes in the 5th or 6th rounds of drafts. But this is the offense of Brian Thomas. You don't do what Brian Thomas did last year as a rookie in a terrible situation and not just continue to be the guy moving forward. He's that damn good. The rest of the competition here outside of Travis Hunter is basically irrelevant. A 1-year, $10 million deal for Diami Brown. I think he's at least interesting in terms of a real life fit on this team. Other than that, you're looking at like Brenton Strange, the tight end, who has like a 15th round pick in fantasy drafts. Sure, just go ahead and get a guy who can maybe have 3 or 4 receptions per game, because what it comes down to for tight ends is who can score 7 touchdowns. That's really what it comes down to for late round tight ends, and who can't. So at this point, there's just 2 wide receivers. They're maybe the most explosive wide receivers in the NFL when you factor in their age and their playmaking ability, and they're going to be on the exact same team just a year apart. To kind of finalize all this, I just want to point out that right here on DraftKings right now, the player props for Brian Thomas this year are the over-under is set at 1,150 receiving yards. That is the 6th highest in the entire league. If you're talking about guys who are higher right now, it is a very short list of like your first round fantasy picks that you would expect. Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. That tier of player is where Brian Thomas is currently settling in at. And the most beautiful thing is he's no longer a first round pick. He's falling into the early 2nd round of fantasy drafts. So there is a world where you can come out here and draft like a Christian McCaffrey and then come around and have Brian Thomas. Or you can even double load up on these young stud wide receivers in Nico Collins and Brian Thomas. And that feels like a really good start to drafts. I mean, I have a video coming out soon and you'll actually see that I was able to land Brian Thomas and another stud wide receiver in the first 2 picks. And although I love getting a running back early, a hero RB approach if you're familiar, I think that is one of the better picks that you can have if you're going to start 2 wide receivers, Nico Collins and Brian Thomas. There's a world where these guys are the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 at the end of the year, and you wouldn't be surprised or shocked at all. Now, if you want to see exactly where I have Brian Thomas and a Nico Collins ranked in my top 50 overall players completely free, you can check it out, link down below right now, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. I rank my top 50 players, I put them in tiers, and I show you the best and worst picks in every single round of those top 50 picks. That will take you to this page right here. You just enter your email, and then from there, it'll be instantly sent to you. Just make sure to check your spam or promotional folders as well, because some people aren't getting them. That's probably where they fall if they don't go right to your inbox. Give it like 1 to 2 minutes, and it'll come there, and you can check it out. But if you want to go even deeper and see more than just my top 50, and you want my full top 250 rankings, all my other drafting tools to help you dominate your draft, and my in-season tools every single week that will help you smack around your friends, well, that's exactly why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. The Fantasy Blueprint is what I use in every single one of my leagues, and over 10,000 people used in their leagues last year. Now, those same people are back this year. There's over 10,000 people in the Blueprint this year. If you want to join those people to smack around your friends and have an unfair advantage against your league mates this year, you can check it out, link down below, or you can go to jointheblueprint.com. That is jointheblueprint.com. I will say there are very limited spots available. I have a personalized approach to this, so I can't take on too many people. Only a couple spots left if you want to check it out. Now, a player I want to talk about that just is getting a ton of crap this offseason is DJ Moore, because people are just down on him. I think it's partially because of last year, even though last year wasn't terrible, but he was inconsistent. And part of it is just because of his body language throughout the tape last year. Okay, sure. DJ Moore, he ended up finishing as the wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game after having a top 10 season the year before that. But you would basically expect, based on where he went last year in drafts, as like a 5th round pick. Okay, wide receiver 26 overall. It's not like he was a bust. He still had 14 fantasy points per game. You scroll down here for an offense that had a terrible offensive line, terrible play calling. He was still able to finish top 10 in targets overall with 140. Still had an elite 26% target share, 13th best in the league. Like, he was still a player who was going out there and earning targets. And that's despite competing leading with a top 10 overall pick, a rookie last year in Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen, who looked good while he was healthy, and now Keenan Allen is no longer on the team. Now, one big reason why we saw DJ Moore's role change a little bit, or he didn't finish as the top 20 wide receiver, is his yards per reception. As you can see right here, normally they're around 14. This is a guy who can win downfield consistently. Last year, it was a career low, just 9.9 yards per reception. And if you watch his film, and if you go on a website like NFL Pro and you just check out a lot of his plays, he's getting a ton of screens, a ton of short area passes, these bubble screens, wide receiver screens, which is just leading to a lower yards per reception, as you see right here. And a lot of this has to do with bad play calling and a really bad offensive line with a rookie quarterback, so they were just trying to get him some easy layup throws, and that's what kind of contributed to this tank in the yards per reception for DJ Moore. But now entering year 2, Caleb Williams has more experience. We're going to get into the offensive line improvements, but the offensive line is way better. And the biggest piece here, you're not having Matt Eberflus as the coach anymore. They just got rid of everybody on this coaching staff. The head coach Eberflus, the offensive coordinator as well. Like, it's going to be a better situation with Ben Johnson coming in, no doubt about it. And I can't blame DJ Moore. When people are saying, oh, but DJ Moore had bad body language, Ben Johnson's not going to like that. If you're doing your job to the best of your ability and you've never said a word in your life, and now for a year you're under these terrible coaches who don't know what they're doing, aren't you going to get frustrated at some point too? There was years with the Carolina Panthers, and even to the start of his career with the Bears, that DJ Moore was known as like the nicest guy ever. He's such an awesome guy. There's never any of this head case stuff. So I'm fine with him getting frustrated in a couple of games last year, because honestly, his coaches were pretty damn dumb. Like, if we're going to admit it, his coaches from a play calling perspective, what happened on Thanksgiving last year and the reason why Eberflus got fired, yeah, I'm not surprised that DJ Moore got frustrated with that guy as his coach. And now if we look at it, that yards per reception with Ben Johnson there, I think it should go up. And even if it doesn't, I think he'll be schemed into a position to pick up more yards after the catch opportunities to actually still have a solid yards per reception. If we look at the offensive line, they get Jonah Jackson, they trade for Joe Thuney, they pick up Drew Dahlman, they end up drafting also Ozzie Trapelo in the draft as well in the second round of tackles. So this is a situation that's looking a lot better right now. It's a nice situation on the offensive line. It's a nice situation with Ben Johnson there. Sure, there's more competition in Colston Loveland, in Luther Burton, who's currently injured. These rookies, as you can see right here on the team changes tracker from the Fantasy Blueprint. Again, join the blueprint.com. There's a lot more competition on this offense, but if you look at it, all the offense on paper, 2 rookies, Rome Odunze, who was fine, maybe underwhelming as a rookie, and DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the proven veteran there. He's the best player on this offense. You're not going to come out here and tell me that Luther Burton's the best wide receiver or overall player on this offense. You're not going to tell me it's Rome Odunze. You could tell me the potential is there for Rome Odunze as a top 10 pick, but he's not currently that player. You're not going to tell me it's Cole Kmet or it's Colston Loveland. You're not going to tell me that it's DeAndre Swift, right? You could maybe argue with me that it is Caleb Williams in terms of most important, sure, but in terms of the best player on this offense, like the biggest playmaker, especially from a fantasy perspective, it's DJ Moore. So when DJ Moore is out there and is currently receiving yards prop is 975.5. On some sites, it's at 1,000 receiving yards, which ranks top 20 in the NFL. And I see him currently right now ranked as the 44th overall player. He's going at the end of the 4th round, sometimes the top of the 5th round. I think that's great. If we all believe that the Bears offense is going to be better under Ben Johnson and all the moves that they made, wouldn't we believe that their number 1 wide receiver is going to have a decent year, break 1,000 yards, maybe 6 to 8 touchdowns? I'm in on DJ Moore at the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th, and I just can't stop drafting him at that point. And a guy I haven't been able to stop drafting all summer because the summer just played out perfectly for Jacoby Myers. Yeah, the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver 1, Jacoby Myers. I know Brock Bowers is there, but he's a tight end, right? But the disrespect every single year for Jacoby Myers continues to happen. Year after year after year, he will produce and people just won't care. And the exact same thing happened in 2024 where he actually had a career high top 20 fantasy season. This was the 3rd straight season where he ends up going out there and finishing as a top 30 receiver. 29th, 24th, and 20th last year, despite only scoring 4 receiving touchdowns. I would argue that that number is probably going to go up. If you break it down to his accounting stats last year, they're all pretty damn good. Despite missing 2 games, Jacoby Myers still ranked top 15 in targets, 129, still had a borderline elite target share at 25%. He went over 1,000 receiving yards with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL, and the dude didn't drop a single pass last year despite having 130 targets. He's a monster. Well, maybe not a monster, but he's reliable and very productive. And let's keep in mind, for the first month of the season, he was, it seems like a long time ago, battling Davante Adams for those first 3 games or so. But once Adams goes down with the hamstring and then gets traded to the New York Jets, Jacoby Myers became a legit wide receiver 1 for this offense. While battling the breakout of Brock Bowers' historic reception season for a tight end, the final 13 games of the year for Myers, 15.5 fantasy points. That's top 20 wide receiver numbers ahead of guys like Devonta Smith last year, 9 targets per game and 72 receiving yards per game. These are very quality numbers. Again, he was a top 20, borderline top 15 fantasy receiver during that time, ahead of guys like Devonta Smith who go rounds before him this year in fantasy. fantasy. And the crazy part is, like, the offseason for Jakobi Meyers was pretty good. What does he get? He gets an upgrade in Geno Smith at quarterback. He gets an upgraded coaching staff to like some adults in the room with Pete Carroll, and then offensive coordinator coming in, Chip Kelly. You look at what else he gets competition-wise, a second-round rookie Jack Bech, a fourth-round rookie Deontay Thornton. I think these guys could be a factor in the NFL. I think there's a decent chance that Jack Bech is the Jakobi Meyers replacement next year. I think Thornton could be an outside wide receiver who's not a high-volume guy. That could still be Brock Bowers in Meyers' role. The only piece that I'd be concerned about is Ashton Jeanty, who people underrate his receiving ability. If you just look a year before, his second to last year in college, he was one of the best pass-catching running backs in the NFL when Boise State had to rely on him there, or pass-catching running backs in college. So Ashton Jeanty will take some of those short area targets. I think that might hurt Brock Bowers a little bit more than Meyers. Meyers is known by a lot of people as like this slot-only player. Meyers was really good on the outside last year as well. So when we start to look at like what this team looks like right now, Trey Tucker, he couldn't do anything last year. I mean, he was just running wind sprints the entire time, just getting in his cardio last year. It's going to be these two rookies. Like, what can these two rookies do? We'll be taking away the target share from a Brock Bowers and also a Jakobi Meyers. And I'm just not going to bet that these two rookies right now, Deontay Thornton having a good training camp and OTAs or mini camp and OTAs, Jack Bech not so much. I'm just not going to bet that those guys are going to take away significant targets for Meyers. Like, sure, maybe they take away a decent amount, but I still feel Jakobi Meyers is going to earn 120 targets if he stays healthy in this offense, maybe even more. And based on where he goes right now as the 83rd overall pick in fantasy drafts, you're telling me that in the 7th round of fantasy drafts right now, I can get Jakobi Meyers and probably lock in 120 targets with an improved quarterback in Geno Smith? It feels really good. I get it that Brock Bowers is still there. Brock Bowers was setting rookie reception records and tight end records last year, and Jakobi Meyers was still able to have the best year of his career, a top 20 player. I think Jakobi Meyers feels like I would say he's not like a win your league type pick, but he's a guy who's a safe pick to probably finish as a top 30 wide receiver once again. I mean, that's all he's done. If you could see right here, Scripps tweet over on Twitter right now. Let's break it down. Over the past 3 seasons, Meyers, like we said, a wide receiver 20, 24, and 29. Despite that, and basically what he did last year is over 1,000 yards despite having terrible quarterback play in Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder. Despite all of this, he's currently going as the wide receiver 49, depending on the site that you look at. This updated ADP that we're looking at right here, Jakobi Meyers is currently going as the wide receiver 40. So again, the last 3 years, he's averaged a top 24 wide receiver finish, and now he's going as the wide receiver 40 in fantasy drafts. Doesn't really make sense. Now, before we get into this next rookie who can be that guy in like the 7th or 8th rounds who could easily win your leagues, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It takes just 2 seconds. Double check that you have it hit. It really goes a long way to helping more people see this content, which only allows me to put out even more when that happens. Appreciate it in advance as we push towards 200,000 subscribers. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, that rookie I'm talking about is in Green Bay, and it's got to be Matthew Golden. Look, this is a guy who is coming off of, I would say, a borderline monster year in college. Like, you look at it, he doesn't break 1,000 yards at Texas, 987, just 58 catches, but he's averaging 17 yards per catch, and this is a guy who is playing on a loaded Texas offense. I'm talking about 2 to 3 wide receivers there who are either in the NFL now or will be in the NFL, a running back in Jaden Blue who is now going to be in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys, Gunnar Helm, a tight end who is now in the NFL as well, right? This was a loaded offense, and he was still the guy coming out there and leading the team with 987 receiving yards, more than anybody else on the team, over 200 receiving yards more than anybody else on the team, had 9 touchdowns as well. He was the biggest play, I would say. He was always consistent and reliable in their biggest games. You talk about the Final Four game against Iowa State. You talk about the SEC championship against Georgia, putting up over 100 yards in those contests. And if I look at Matt Harmon's reception perception breakdown here on how good he was, you can see he says he was excellent on success on deep and intermediate routes. Excellent. Okay. 83rd percentile in contested catch, 82nd percentile against zone coverage. Now, the man coverage wasn't all that good, and that would be a concern, but you're going to see a lot of zone coverage in the NFL. So it was interesting to see that he dominated zone coverage, he dominated at the catch point, and he dominated to those intermediate and deep parts of the field, which is exactly what the Packers need, especially with Christian Watson now injured. You're basically getting the upgrade to Christian Watson, who could come back later in the season, but you're getting the 4.29 speed. That's an upgrade on speed in Christian Watson on the outside. Watson in general was sort of this raw prospect out of a smaller school who was just known for his pure athleticism and big play ability. Matthew Golden just did it in the SEC last year and has a more well-rounded route running ability to his name than a Christian Watson. I mean, let's just look at some of the advanced analytics on Twitter from Austin Abbott. You can check him out right here. He had Matthew Golden a higher yards per reception than Ted McMillan, T-Mac last year, a higher catch percentage than Emeka Egbuka, despite Egbuka playing out of the slot for most of his time at Ohio State, and a lower drop rate than Trey Harris. These are all guys who went at or before him in the NFL draft this past season. These are all guys who, in terms of fantasy football, are going around or way before him, like a T-Mac. It makes sense there. Like an Egbuka going in a similar range despite having more competition. I like Egbuka, I like T-Mac as well, but Matthew Golden is being slept on, especially when you consider the Packers need people. Highest rated rate of incompletions due to receiver errors last year, that's running the wrong route or drops, the Packers #1 in the NFL. 23% of Jordan Love's incompletions or Malik Willis when he filled in last year, 23%, almost 1 out of 4 were because the receiver messed up. This wide receiver room was extremely inconsistent last year. We all know that Dontavian Wicks was inconsistent with his drops. Romeo Doubs was inconsistent in terms of how he was able to get open and separate. Some games he just disappeared. Jayden Reed just couldn't stay on the field. Some of that is play calling, and then some of that is just Jayden Reed from an injury, a drops perspective as well. Christian Watson, actually, believe it or not, wasn't concerning in terms of drops as much last year, but it was just obviously the injuries that kept him off the field. So a very inconsistent wide receiver room. Maybe Matthew Golden, a player who was consistent for Texas last year, especially in the biggest moments, can finally be the piece that, I'm not going to say he has 1,500 yards. We don't need that. Can just be a guy who can go out there, be reliable, have 950 to 1,000 yards, catch a couple of touchdowns, and easily pay off this draft price for you. Because this draft price right now is barely being a top 100 player. He's going in as the 95th overall pick. I mean, this is an 8th or a 9th round pick in fantasy football. You're telling me that people are taking Cooper Kupp at or around the same exact spot or before Matthew Golden. Cooper Kupp, who's 32, who's broken down the last 2 years, who's on a new team now with a new coach and a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback. No, you're not doing that. You're taking Matthew Golden paired up with Jordan Love's big arm and a quality offense, the explosive rookie Matthew Golden. Take that dude in round 8 or 9. That is the mold of a league-winning type player. So these are 5 wide receivers you should absolutely be drafting this year if you want to schmack around your friends in fantasy football. Now, just a reminder, if you want my top 50 overall rankings completely free to help you with your drafts, just head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That's fantasyrankingsfree.com, or there is a link in the description below. Now, if you want to see the running back version of this video, the 4 running backs you should be drafting if you want to schmack around your friends this year, well, you can check out that video right here. I believe, just like this video, it's going to help you a ton with your drafts this season.